Okay, since you used to teach in this building, Dale Euclides, would you lead us in the
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Then we will move on to approval of the minutes from the regular board meeting held on June 10th, 2020. And I would ask what is your desire regarding those minutes?
Move to approve. That's political.
Sam Steiner, second.
Okay.
Any discussion or questions about it? Then we'll go ahead and take the vote.
Mr. Camardi?
Yes.
Mr. Neve?
Yes.
Mrs. Steiner?
Yes.
Dr. Schulman?
Yes.
Dr. Sidwala?
Yes.
Mr. Euclides?
Yes.
Mrs. Bohan?
Yes. And then we have the accounts for the month of June. What is your desire regarding approving those?
So move.
Second.
Thank you. And any discussion or questions? Then we'll take the vote on that.
Mr. Neve?
Yes.
Mrs. Steiner?
Yes.
Dr. Schulman?
Yes.
Dr. Sidwala?
Yes.
Mr. Euclides?
Yes.
Mrs. Bohan?
Yes.
Mr. Camardi?
Yes.
Do we have any communications from the public?
No.
Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to the superintendent's report.
Ms. Francis, there was a correspondence folder.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I will look at it while you start the superintendent's report, and I'll pass it this way, and you can pass it back, and we'll go back.
And just moving through, we do not have any district recognitions or superintendent's report for the meeting today, so we would be on to the gifts and donations.
Anything else? Then we will move on to we don't have any acceptance of gifts tonight, so we'll move on to employee relations. Mr. Euclides. I think I'll let you do that.
I believe that's.
Technically, we did not meet since
Well,
our
we did,
last.
it was just Francis and I.
What?
It was just
Okay.
Francis and I.
Would you like Sam to give the
Okay, I
report?
guess I
then?
wasn't there. Go ahead.
Thanks, Sam. That's fine.
And so I think this was the shortest meeting on record. We met June 24th to discuss one item, which was the proposed special education program assistant position, which is a full-time position that we're going to bring forward today for action. We had discussed this position earlier. It is to relieve some of the sort of administrative paperwork that has to be done in order to, for the special education program, in order to free up some of the psychologists and counselors' time for direct work with students. And it made a lot of sense, and Nicole Faber brought that for us a couple of times, and so we did want to bring that forth for an action item on behalf of the board, on behalf of the committee for the board to vote on this evening.
So is there a motion on behalf of the committee then to
Yes,
approve
okay,
the
yeah.
special education program assistant position? And just in case anyone's interested, I did bring a copy of the job description, so we were provided with that at the meeting. Any questions or discussion about that? Then we'll go ahead and take the roll on approval of the special education program assistant position.
Mrs. Steiner?
Yes.
Dr. Schulman?
Yes.
Dr. Sidwala?
Yes.
Mr. Euclides?
Yes.
Mrs. Bohan?
Yes.
Mr. Camardi?
Yes.
Mr. Neve?
Yes.
Okay, then we'll move right on to Finance Committee. Dr. Sidwala.
So we met earlier today. The Student Services Special Ed budget was presented to us. It's very similar to prior years. There are small changes to increase technology and decrease travel funding, which is obviously closely related to the COVID situation we're in right now. And we talked a little bit about the breakdown of monies that go into this budget from federal funds for special ed, some state and categorical funds, and the remainder from the district budget. we did discuss the draft list of cuts that would need to be made if a budget referendum is not put forth and passed in the upcoming election based on the cycle of how our school district budget works. So I won't go into a lot of detail, but this is something that we discussed in the finance committee and then again in the executive committee, and there'll be more discussion about this in the coming months. We then went over the budget for this coming school year, 2021, and talked about what we know about monies coming in from the state, which doesn't really affect our operational budget. We have a cap on what we are supposed to spend, regardless of what comes from the state. It's just the balance comes from the tax levy. What we did discuss is that everything looks as it should look right now, because what the state government hasn't done yet, but we anticipate they might do, is a budget repair bill to account for decreased tax revenue through the COVID period. And if that were to happen, we'd anticipate there might be reductions in the money that we have. So we've been very proactive in preparing for the possibility of a reduction by looking at what could be changed in terms of expenditures all across the school district. And again, we don't know what will happen, but we are prepared for any eventuality. Finally, we looked at the variance report to look at what was expended in this past school year's budget versus what was budgeted and also what had been expended in years prior. There were obviously some expenditures that were not made because school was not in session, and how that money rolls into some of our additional expenditures because of COVID is not yet set in stone, but overall we're in a good position financially to make the kind of decisions we need to make. So unless there's questions, there are actually no action items coming out of finance tonight.
Thank you. Any questions for? Thank you. Then curriculum and instruction is next, so I will pass this to you, Mr. Yukaitis. And curriculum and instruction did meet on June 24th. The first thing we talked about was summer school to see how it was going. And the enrollment at elementary was 380 students at that time. In the high school level, 360. The one day is first they did the virtual summer school, but there are a handful of classes that needed to be in person, otherwise they couldn't happen, and those started this week. And Dr. Christensen has informed us that so far it all seems to be going well, and they're able to keep distancing and other requirements to keep everyone safe in place. So we appreciate that. And moving on to the professional development program offerings, just as a reminder, I think we may have mentioned this before, but we did double the potential to take professional development classes that could add to pay for taking them, so that our teachers would have the option of adding extra classes to familiarize themselves with different techniques for virtual learning, and talk about things that are available to them in the way of resources for that, etc. So that was reviewed and discussed. We also looked at the annual bullying report, which is in our policy that we will look at that every year. And we will be looking at it again next year. I don't think there was anything remarkable to report there. We did talk about some questions regarding to what degree it was broken down as to what the situation was and who was reporting it, and did they have to name, what their perspective was, if it was someone who witnessed it, if it was someone who was involved or impacted by it, etc. So we looked at the questionnaire, and it's actually very good. So I think we were pretty impressed with that. And you guys can chime in if you have anything to add to any of this. We also looked at the Maple program update. That's at the middle school with the joint teaching underway between the teachers in the different core subjects. And they will continue to plan throughout the summer. And the construction is starting on that to prepare the room. And we got to see some of the pictures of what's being planned. And the amazing thing is there was a target of how many kids should be in there to make it similar to the assignments that the other teacher groups in the building have. And it came out very close, just a few over. So we have 164 learners enrolled, and this was based on families and students self-enrolling. And so that worked out well. The other thing that's amazing, 81 7th graders, 83 8th graders. So again, and 79 males, 85 females, and 8% are students with disabilities. So it's we couldn't have planned that mixture any better than it worked out all on its own. So that's pretty much it, unless either of the other committee members have anything to add. Thank you. Okay, then we will move right along here to policy. Dr. Schulman.
Policy also had a brief meeting on June 24th. There's only one item on the agenda, which was the second reading for the 2020 to 2021 elementary student handbook. We had some guests available because there had been some question as to why a lot of language around some of the interventions and testing that takes place around drug and alcohol abuse or other issues at the higher levels had been taken out of the elementary school, and it essentially came down to we just don't do those, use those tools in that age group. So it was just taken out. The rest of the handbook was reviewed again, and no other significant issues came up. We did not discuss anything else. We're looking to do more Neola updates in the future. And on behalf of the committee, I move that we accept the 2020 to 2021 elementary student handbook.
Thank you. So we have a motion on behalf of committee to approve the 2020-2021 elementary student handbook. Any questions or discussion? And we'll go ahead and take the vote on that.
Dr. Schulman?
Yes.
Dr. Sitwalla?
Yes.
Mr. Yekitis?
Yes.
Mrs. Bohan?
Yes.
Mr. Conrady?
Yes.
Mr. Neve?
Yes.
Mrs. Steiner?
Yes.
And then Mr. Conrady,
We did not meet.
Facilities Committee did not meet this month. Okay, thank you. And we will move on to new business, which includes approval of retirements, resignation, employment of new personnel. So at that point, I'll see what Mr. Yekitis has to say.
No retirements. Approval of resignations as an individual board member. I recommend that we approve, or I move that we approve the resignation of Nicole Larson, a teacher assistant of special education at Lincoln School, and also a resignation of Kelly Michaels, teacher of learning disabilities at the middle school. That is my recommendation as an individual board member.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Then any discussion on those? Thank you. Then we will go ahead and take the vote.
Dr. Sitwalla?
Yes.
Mr. Yekitis?
Yes.
Mrs. Bohan?
Yes.
Mr. Conrady?
Yes.
Mr. Neve?
Yes.
Mrs. Steiner?
Yes.
Dr. Schulman?
Yes.
Approval of the employment of new personnel. I move that we approve the hiring of Paul Downs as a teacher of grade 6 at Lincoln School, replacing Jill Kupfer. of Sonia Haas, a teacher of the Emotional and Behavioral Disabilities Program at the middle school, replacing Robin Schuler. The hiring of Elizabeth Heath, a teacher in grade 5 at Lincoln School, replacing Rachel Munger. And finally, Hannah Walensky, a teacher at kindergarten level at Grant School, replacing Elizabeth Holmes. That is my motion to approve.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Thank you. So, Mr. Gann. Any discussion or questions on the hiring of those 4 individuals? And we'll
Just
go-
one further comment. At times when we say replacing, sometimes those persons that we list as being replaced actually are inter-district transfers to a different area, just so for the record. I'm not sure if we have that this time, but that's what we have quite often with that.
Okay, then we'll go ahead and take the roll.
Mr. Yekitis?
Yes?
Mrs. Bohan?
Yes.
Mr. Conrady?
Yes.
Mr. Need?
Yes.
Mrs. Steiner?
Yes.
Dr. Schulman?
Yes.
Dr. Sitwalla?
Yes.
Then every year we need to vote or approve our district's academic standards that will be in effect for the next school year, for the 2020-2021 school year. And you have, so the very first thing I need is a motion.
Move to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
And a second, Dr. Sloan. Okay, any comments on that? Dr.
No, I think you've outlined it pretty clearly that this is an annual process that the Board of Education needs to go through by state statute. And for those that are listening, the full, we'll be watching the video of our board meeting, the full listing of our curriculum that and standards that we're talking about on the approval here are listed on the district website at marshfieldschools.org.
Thank you. And that is an invaluable resource for anyone that's interested. And if you do go there, I just want to point out that standards are different than curriculum. Standards are what we strive for, but these are the standards that are going to be in place that our curriculum needs to meet. And the curriculum plays out the details of how we teach and what we teach to comply with those standards. So for anyone going to the website, which we encourage, that hopefully explains that a little bit better. Then we'll go ahead and take, or any other discussion?
I just thought it was important to remind the public that we have actually done review of those syllabi over the past, few months, that we've had those to look at and review it. So it's not just a rubber stamp. There have been some thought.
Right, and when we review, at any point in time, the board could review our standards. So far, they've served us well, and we have not changed them recently. So then we'll go ahead and take the vote.
Mrs. Bohan?
Yes.
Mr. Conrady?
Yes.
Mr. Need?
Yes.
Mrs. Steiner?
Yes.
Dr. Schulman?
Yes.
Dr. Sitwalla?
Yes.
Mr. Yekitis?
Yes. Move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. And I heard a second over here. Thank you. And we will, and everyone said,
Aye.
okay, that's it. We are adjourned.
Thank you. Well, we may